Ow. All right. Chapter 4, Box 5. Armand Moncharmin wrote such voluminous memoirs during the fairly long period of his co-management that we may well ask if he ever found time to attend to the affairs of the Opera House otherwise than by telling what went on there. And Moncharmin did not know a note of music. But he called the Minister of Education and Fine Arts by his Christian name, had dabbled a little in society journalism, and enjoyed a considerable private income. Lastly, he was a charming fellow, and showed that he was not lacking in intelligence. For as soon as he made up his mind to be a sleeping partner in the opera, he selected the best possible active manager and went straight to Firmin Richard. Firmin Richard was a very distinguished composer who had published a number of successful pieces of all kinds. And who liked nearly every form of music and every sort of musician. Clearly, therefore, it was the duty of every sort of musician to like M. Firmin Richard. The only things to be said against him were that he was rather masterful in his ways of endowed with a very hasty temper. The first few days which the partners spent at the opera were given over to the delight of them finding themselves the head of so magnificent an emprise, and they had forgotten all about the curious, fantastic story of the ghost, when an incident occurred that proved to them that the joke, if it were, was not over. M. Firmin Richard reached his office that morning at 11 o'clock. His secretary, M. Remy, showed him half a dozen letters which he had not opened because they were marked private. One of the letters had at once attracted Richard's attention, not only because the envelope was addressed in red ink, but because he seemed to have seen the writing before. He soon remembered that the red handwriting in which the memorandum book had been so curiously completed. He recognized the clumsy, childish hand. He opened the letter and read, "Dear Mr. Manager, I am sorry to have to trouble you at a time when you must be so very busy, renewing important engagements, signing fresh ones, and generally displaying your excellent taste. I know what you have done to Carlotta. I know what you have done for Carlotta, Sorelli, and little James, and for a few others whose admirable qualities of talent or genius you have suspected. Of course, when I use these words, I do not mean to apply them to La Charlotta, who sings like a squirt, or who ought never to have been allowed to leave the ambassadors and the Catholic chagrin, nor to La Sorelli, who owes her success mainly to the coach builders, nor to little James, who dances like a calf in a field. And I am not speaking of Christine Daae either, though her genius is certain. Whereas your jealousy prevents her from creating any important part. When all is said, you are free to conduct your little business as you think best, are you not? All the same, you should like to take advantage of the fact that you have not turned Christine Daae out of doors by hearing her this evening in the part of Cybele, as that of Margarita has been forbidden since her triumph of the other evening. And I will not ask you to dispose of my box today, nor on the following days, for I cannot end this letter without telling you how disagreeably surprised I have been once or twice to hear, on arriving at the opera, that my box had been sold at the box office by your orders. I did not protest, first, because I dislike scandal, and second, because I thought that your predecessors, M.M. de Benign and Polygamy, who were always charming to me, had neglected. Before leaving, to mention my little fads to you, I have now received a reply from those gentlemen to my letter asking for an explanation, and this reply proves that you know all about my Remendum book, and consequently that you are treating me with outrageous contempt. If you wish to live in peace, you must not begin talking away my private box. Believe me to be, dear Mr. Manager, without prejudice to these little observations, your most humble and obedient servant, Opera Ghost. The letter was accompanied by a cutting from the agony column of the Revue Theatrale, which ran, "O.G. There is no excuse for R and M. We told them and left their memorandum book in their hands. Kind regards." M. Firmin Richard had hardly finished reading this letter when M. Hardman Moncharmin entered carrying one exactly similar. They looked at each other and burst out laughing. "They are keeping up the joke," said M. Richard, "but I don't call it funny." "What does it all mean?" asked M. Moncharmin. "Do they imagine that, because they have been managers of the opera, we are going to let them have the box for an indefinite period? I am not in the mood to let myself be laughed at long," said Firmin Richard. It's harmless enough, observed Armin Moncharmin. What is it they really want? A box for tonight? M. Furman Richard told his secretary to send Box 5 on the Grand Tier to M.M. and Polygamy. If it was not sold, if it was not sold, it was not. It was sent off to them. Debonine lived at the corner of the Rue Scribe and the Boulevard des Capuchus. Polygamy in the Rue Aubert. Oh, ghosts. 2 letters had been posted at the Boulevard des Capuchus post office, as Moncharmin remarked after examining the envelopes. "You see?" said Richard. They shrugged their shoulders and regretted that 2 men of that age should amuse themselves with such childish tricks. "They might have been silver for all that," said Moncharmin. "Did you notice how they treated us with regard to Charlotta, Sorelli, and little James?" "Why, my dear fellow, these 2 are mad with jealousy. To think that they went to the expense of an advertisement in the Revue Theatrale. Have they nothing better to do? By the way," said Moncharmin, "they seem to be greatly interested in little Christine Daae. You know as well as I do that she has a reputation of being quite good," said Richard. "Reputations are easily obtained," replied Moncharmin. "Haven't I a reputation for knowing all about music? And I don't know one key from the other." "Don't be afraid. You never had that reputation," Richard declared. Thereupon he ordered the artist to be shown in, who for the last 2 hours had been walking up and down outside the door behind which fame and fortune, or dismissal, awaited them. The whole day was spent in discussing, negotiating, signing, or canceling contracts, and the 2 overworked managers went to bed early without so much as casting a glance at Box 5 to see whether M. Debonine or M. Polygamy were enjoying their performance. Next morning, the managers received a card of thanks from the ghost. "Dear Mr. Manager, thanks. Charming event. Daae exquisite. Choruses want waking up. Charlotta a splendid commonplace instrument. Will write you soon for the 240,000 francs and the 233,424 francs 70 C to be correct. M.M. Debonine and Polygamy have sent me the 6,575 francs 30 C, representing the first 10 days of my allowance for the current year. Their privileges finished on the evening of the 10th inst. Kind regards, O.G. On the other hand, there was a letter from M.M. Debonine and Polygamy. Gentlemen, we are much obliged for your kind thought of us, but you will easily understand that the prospect of Again hearing Faust, pleasant though it is to ex-managers of the opera, cannot make us forget that we have no right to occupy Box 5 on the Grand Tier, which is the exclusive property of him, of whom we spoke to you when we went through the Memorandum Book with you for the last time. See Clause 98, final paragraph. Except gentlemen, etc. Oh, those fellows are beginning to annoy me, shouted Furman Richard, snatching up the letter. That evening, Box 5 was sold. The next morning, M.M. Richard and Moncharming, on reaching their office, had an inspector's report relating to an incident that had happened the night before in Box 5. I give the essential part of the report. I was obliged to call in the Municipal Guard twice this evening to clear Box 5 on the Grand Tier, once at the beginning and once in the middle of the second act. The occupants who arrived as the curtain rose on the second act created a regular scandal by their laughter and their ridiculous observations. There were cries of hush all around them, and the whole house was beginning to protest when the box-keeper came to fetch me. I entered the box and said what I thought necessary. The people did not seem to me to be in their right mind. They made stupid remarks. I said that if the noise was repeated, I should be compelled to clear the box. The moment I left, I heard the laughing again, with fresh protests from the house. I returned with a municipal guard who turned them out. They protested, still laughing, saying they would not go unless they had their money back. At last they became quiet, and I allowed them to enter the box again. The laughter at once recommenced, and this time I had them turned out indefinitely. "Send for the inspector," said Richard to his secretary, who had already read the report and marked it with blue pencil. M. Remy, the secretary, had foreseen the order and had called the inspector at once. "Tell us what happened," said Richard bluntly. The inspector began to splutter and refer to the report. What were those people laughing at?" asked Moncharming. "They must have been dining, sir, and seemed more inclined to lark about than to listen to good music. The moment they entered the box, they came out again, and called the box-keeper, who asked them what they wanted. They said, 'Look in the box. There's no one there, is there?' 'No,' said the woman. 'Well,' said they, 'when we went in, we heard a voice saying that the box was taken.'" And Moncharming could not help smiling as he looked at M. Richard, but M. Richard did not smile. He himself had done too much in the way in his time not to recognize in the inspector's story all the marks of one of those practical jokes which begin by amusing and end by enraging the victims. Excuse me. The inspector, to curry a favor of M. Moncharmin, who was smiling, thought it best to give a smile too. A most unfortunate smile. M. Charming glared at his subordinates, who thenceforth made it his business to display a face of utter consternation. However, when the people arrived, roared Richard, there was no one in the box, was there? Not a soul, sir, not a soul. Nor in the box on the right, nor the box on the left. Not a soul, sir, I swear. The box-keeper told it me often enough, which proves that it was all a joke. Oh, you agree, do you? Said Richard. You agree? It's a joke. And you think it funny, no doubt. I think it in very bad taste, sir. And what did the box-keeper say? Oh, she just said that it was the opera ghost. That's all. That's all she said. The inspector grinned, but he soon found that he had made a mistake in grinning, for the words had no sooner fell out of his mouth than M. Richard, from gloomy, became furious. Send for the box-keeper, he shouted. Send for her this minute, and bring her in to me, and turn all those people out. The inspector cried to protest, but Richard closed his mouth with an angry order to hold his tongue. Then, when the wretched man's lips seemed shut forever, the manager commanded him to open them once more. Who is this opera ghost? He snarled. But the inspector was by this time incapable of speaking a word. He managed to convey by despairing gesture that he knew nothing about it, or rather that he did not wish to know. Have you ever seen him? Have you seen the opera ghost? The inspector, by means of vigorous shake of his head, denied ever having seen the ghost in question. Very well, said M. Richard coldly. The inspector's eyes started out of his head, as to ask why the manager had uttered that ominous very well. Because I'm going to settle the account of anyone who has not seen him, explained the manager, as he seems to be everywhere. I can't have people telling me that they see him now. Now where? I like people to work for me when I employ them. Having said this, M. Richard paid no attention to the inspector and discussed various matters of business with his acting manager, who had entered the room meanwhile. The inspector thought he could go and was gently, oh so gently, sliding toward the door, when M. Richard nailed the man to the floor with a thundering, "Stay where you are!" M. Remy had sent for the box-keeper to the Rue de Provence, close to the opera, where she was engaged as a portress. She soon made her appearance. "What's your name?" "Madame Gurgey." You know me well enough, sir. I'm the mother of little Gurgey. Little Meg. What?" This was said in so rough and solemn a tone that, for a moment, M. Richard was impressed. He looked at Madame Gurgey in her faded shawl, her worn shoes, her old taffeta dress and diggy bonnet. It was quite evident from the manager's attitude that he either did not know or could not remember having met Madame Gurgey, nor even little Gurgey, nor even little Meg. But Madame Gurgey's pride was so great that the celebrated box-keeper imagined that everybody knew her. "Never heard of her," the manager declared. "But that's no reason, Madame Gurgey, why I shouldn't ask you what happened last night to make you and the inspector call in the municipal guard. I was just wanting to see you, sir, and talk to you about it, so that you mightn't have the same unpleasantness as M. de Mine and M. Polygamy. They wouldn't listen to me either at first. I'm not asking you about all that. I'm asking what happened last night." Madame Gurgey turned purple with indignation. Never had she been spoken to like that. She rose as though to go, gathering up the folds of her skirt and waving the feathers of her dicky bonnet with dignity. But changing her mind, she sat down and said in a haughty voice, "I'll tell you what happened. The ghost was annoyed again." Thereupon, as M. Richard was on the point of bursting out, M. Moncharmin interfered and conducted the interrogany, whence it appeared that Madame Gurgey thought it quite natural that a voice should be heard to say that a box was taken, when there was no one in the box. She was unable to explain this phenomenon, which was not new to her, except by the intervention of the ghost. Nobody could see the ghost in his box. Everybody could hear him. She had often heard him, and they could believe her, for she always spoke the truth. They could ask M. de Mine and M. Polygamy and anybody who knew her, and also M. Isidore Sac, who had had a leg broken by the ghost. "Indeed," said Moncharmin, interrupting her. "Did the ghost break poor Isidore Sac's leg?" Madame Gurgey opened her eyes with astonishment at such ignorance. However, such she conceded to enlighten those two poor innocents. The thing had happened in M. de Mine and M. Polygamy's time, also in Box 5, and also during a performance of Faust. Madame Gurgey coughed, clearing her throat. It sounded as though she were preparing to sing the whole of Gounod's score, and began. "It was like this, sir. That night, Manira